started. Okay. We start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, okay, if those of you who have cell phones active, move down. We next introduce ourselves. And if we will just go around the room very briefly, just say your name. And if you want to say very briefly while you're here, that's exciting. But please, let's start with our expert.
Okay, Daniel Pence, I'm the registrar.
And next to you there.
And next to me,
Max Registrar, I'm with a company called ElectCast, and I'll be giving a presentation later in the meeting.
And Trish.
Trish Jones, Deputy Registrar. Betty Gibbs, Secretary of the Electoral Board.
David Levy, Chair of the Electoral Board.
Jerry Strako, my first meeting, and already the vice chair. That was the only position left. So, all right. Nice to see you all.
Valerie Hines, election officer.
Yes.
Jeff Rosner, Lynchburg Democratic Committee, authorized representative, and voter protection liaison.
Carolyn Shariko, citizen. Judy Farrell, citizen.
Raj Webb, citizen.
Henry Salas, officer of election. Boris Zafarati, citizen. Dr. Brenda Palmer, citizen.
Patricia Walkman, election official, assistant chief of account.
Christine Gibbons, citizen.
Brian John, citizen.
Sharon Jones, citizen.
Kim Connor, citizen.
Linda Arnold, former registrar for the city of Lynchburg.
James Arnold, citizen.
Nancy Davis, deputy registrar.
Deborah Jenkins, citizen.
Angela Kidd, citizen.
Mark Hand, citizen, reporter with the News and Advance.
Lane, citizen.
Michael Walker,
House District 52.
Michael Brother, citizen and electoral officer.
thank you. And our newest people in?
Good evening, everyone. I am a citizen, proud citizen of Lynchburg. My name is Vicki Bradley.
See you.
Thank you.
As well. Thank you.
Okay.
And
Thank
I'm
you for
Terry.
coming. Thank you, and thank you, Delegate Walker, for being here.
Y'all need any seats down there?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we got you. I think there's some in the back room there. Okay, our next order of business on the agenda is the reorganization of the board. Since this is the first meeting of the year, under the statute, we have to elect officers. And we will also discuss the duties of the officers in terms of supervising polling places. I propose that we select a chair and a secretary and a vice chair. And I propose that I be chair, that you be secretary. By law, you have to be myself. And Jerry, you be vice chair. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any question? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, opposition? Okay. As the duties of each board member, we each have taken on six precincts as particular precincts that we supervise. And I've circulated in advance of the meeting those precincts. I'm content with the precincts that I have supervision. Betty, you and Gary might think about trading some precincts, since there some ones that might be in order to trade.
Trading cards.
Okay,
Yeah, I would be willing to trade Or Liberty. Since I've worked at Liberty before. Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. And for those who might not realize, Liberty is our precinct that creates the most problems because of the same day registrations. And this farmer here has been the chief officer there, the chief, and she knows it well and has done a super job on it. It's not a question of our doing anything special in those precincts. In fact, all of our election officers, all of our board members tend to end up at Liberty on November election day because of the particular issues that might arise there. But I think that's an acceptable kind of lineup for at least this year. Do we need a motion to that effect? That we approve, I move that we approve the current lineup of responsibilities, except that Lincoln Metal will be Mr. Shreko's and Liberty will be Ms. Gibbs for the coming year.
Second.
Any readiness? All in favor? Aye. Okay, any other issues about reorganizing the board at this point?
If you're wondering, it's the precincts that Steve Troxel did, we take over the other 5.
Yeah. There are 18 precincts that involved in it, would be endless for me to recite them, which I can't do to time. Except for next item is the approval of agenda and meetings minutes. We have the agenda in front of us. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? Or are there any items we should pick up?
I'll look at the agenda.
I second. Leanne, readiness? All in favor? Aye. Opposition? Passed. The minutes for the December 4th meeting have been posted on the website and they are in our packet. I've reviewed them. I don't know if you reviewed them.
I reviewed them, but it wasn't here for that meeting, so I really can't offer any corrections. So
I move the approval of the minutes from the December 4, 2025 board meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, we have the schedule of board meetings for the next year. Mr. Greco, you had mentioned that you might have some concern about the first quarter speech.
So yeah, besides working full-time at Randall College History Department, I'm on a lot of boards. And sometimes boards overlap, and I was asking if it would be possible if we could move these meetings to the second Thursday, since we're right now on the second Thursday because of the holiday of last week. And 2 colleagues said that would be fine. So that was what I asked if we could possibly.
We had a brief just
now.
So.
And I asked Dan as well.
Ms. Gibbs, any concerns?
No, I'm okay with that.
Okay, I move that we set our meeting, our regular meetings for the second Thursday of each month. Look forward to this year. Second on
Second that. So.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? It's passed.
But still at 4 o'clock.
Right, still at 4 o'clock, yes. Good, good.
I'm not going to be that pushing to change the time as well. Right? We appreciate this. So.
Mr. Pettis, do you have a registrar's office report?
I do. Okay, registrar's report for January 8th, 2025.
Table of contents, as usual, statistical reports, budgetary reports, some ongoing projects, some announcements, and a calendar of expected items coming up. First report is the registered counts by locality for December of 2025. This gives you a breakdown of how many active, inactive voters, as well as military, overseas, and federal we have per precinct. As you can see, we have a couple of precincts that are pretty close to 5,000, 90 review, and some one over 401. If we have a turnout in November presidential coming up in 2028, where we have close to that number, we'll need to think about reapportioning those precincts, but just something to keep an eye on as we go forward. Total overall, we have 58,934 voters as of the end of December. Any questions on that report? All right, locality statistics. This just tracks numbers in and out of each precinct. We have between the, I guess it would be the 1, 2, 3, 4th and 7th column, the numbers of voters that are coming into each precinct, and then the row columns behind that all the way down to net change are voters going out of each particular precinct. You can see that we have a net change, mostly downward, but some are still climbing. For example, 305 climbed a little bit this last period, and 302, because it's a student precinct, a little more volatile, also dropped by 27 in this particular time period. And the net ending totals are in the right-hand column there, and you can see where we ended up for each precinct. Any question on this? Registrar Department budget. This is as of January of 2026, meeting of this year. Each of these categories, the first half a dozen on the left-hand side there, under the major headings, are all about personnel, what the personnel costs are for the registrar's office. That's permanent personnel. And then starting down below that, you see other expenses that are assigned to the registrar's portion of the budget. And that goes down through about halfway through this page. And then starting down into the next section is the assigned accounts that are with the electoral board's budget. Typically, the way we divide this is everything that's kind of a business as usual, taking care of things with the office and personnel that are permanent full-time, go on the registrar's budget. Everything that has to do with elections, like things like ballots and costs for software and costs for election programming, things like that, as well as election officers on the day of election. That all goes over into the electoral board's budget. So that's how that's split up. Just going all the way down to the end, because that's the most relevant here, you can see that the totals for the electoral board right now, on the right-hand side, all the way down to the column that says electoral board, electoral board totals, we're about 67% of our budget. And for registrar, we're about 59% of our budget. Overall, that gives us about 59% for our expense for this year so far. So it puts us a little bit ahead of our spend. Our spend should be, we're about a 6-month period. Our spend should be about 50%. And so we're about 10% ahead of where we might otherwise be. And I'll talk more about the budget when we get down to that area. One of the things that, oops, let me back up one slide. One of the things that we've tried to do over the last couple of elections is work out what a cost per election might be, because that helps us in determining what our budget might look like, or our budget request of the city might look like. And so this is an assessment, and it's a little bit of finger in the air, but based on some real numbers over the last couple of years of how much it costs to put on an election in Lynchburg with the percentage of turnout. And as you can see, even to the low percent turnout, we have about a cost of about $60,000. That's because by code, we're required to have a certain number of election officers at each precinct. It takes, with 2 weeks of early vote, 45 days, of early voting. It takes a certain number of people in the office to do early voting, and at a certain cost, it ends up being slightly variable, but it's not nothing, even at a low turnout, because you have to staff it. And, even if you order less ballots for a low turnout election, you still have a certain cost. So pretty much the minimum cost for Lynchburg to run an election, even at a very low turnout, is about $60,000. And then as you see the curve ramped up as per turnout, it bends over a little bit because you don't have to have a straight line, increase the number of election officers and things like that. But programming costs gets amortized across a larger number of ballots and voters. But at the end of the day, it still costs about $125,000 or so, even at a turnout of about 60%, which is maybe where you'd be for many presidential elections. So that kind of gives you the gamut of what would be low end turnout for a very, low primary, say, for example, a turnout primary, or a high turnout or high interest election, like a presidential. I did submit a budget for fiscal 2027. This is something, an exercise that every department in the city goes through at the beginning of each year, essentially for the next fiscal year, which starts in July 1. And so the city finance department looks at the budget that we each submit, and then, discusses with us whether or not this is the appropriate numbers. The mandate for the last couple of years from the department from the administration has been that we should be flat year over year. Unfortunately, that doesn't fit reality. There is an increased cost over time for various things. And so our costs actually are about $100,000 or so more than, and this is just based on costs from the previous couple of years, than the city is wanting us to submit for a budget. So I had a conversation with Donna Witt, the department head over there, and the agreement that we came to, because she was telling me she needed to cut $2 million out of the budget. So what we agreed to was a revised submission from our department, which includes one November election. So the numbers that we showed in the last slide, basically we factored them into this budget here to say, okay, if we submit a budget with the registrar's budget and then one November election, then we get into the range that you want us to get into. However, what that requires is that we will be coming back to the city finance committee, and the city council will need to approve the funding for any additional elections during the year. So that's something that typically would happen as quite a third quarter budget request coming up, usually March or maybe early April. And so I've told them that we can live with this budget for a single election year. But if there are any additional elections, which as you know, there often are, and certainly this coming calendar year, there almost certainly will be, that we'll be coming back for more funding. And that funding will look like a projection based on this rough turnout for election cost. Any questions so far on what I've shared?
Just to be clear, Dan, on the budget, what the city is operating from is a budget that projects simply one election a year. And as we see whether there are primaries scheduled or special elections scheduled, we're going to have to let the city know about additional funds that will create as an obligation of the city.
Correct. I mean, that's basically how we navigated our way through this last budget cycle. We've been in the past just requesting funding, we believe, for the year, which would include, one election plus maybe another election. But they are supposedly at this point would prefer us to put in one election and then request additional funds for additional elections. So that's what this budget I'm showing you here. It's different. On last meeting, I actually showed a budget that reflected our, our ask, which would include a couple of elections. But they, they didn't like that alignment. So we've gone ahead and submitted one that's more to their liking. But the net result of that is that we almost certainly will be coming back for additional funding. And they should be made aware of that. The city finance department is definitely aware of that.
Okay.
How often do we have just one election? Maybe look at this over time.
I think the last one election year was back in what, 21, 22, which maybe further than that. So it's, at this point, it seems like it's not been too great. Usually we have multiple elections. Now, having said that, David's on the committee to, the state committee to review that whole question, right? So.
To actually see about moving the dates of the elections such that they're the same cycle as the federal cycle every 2 years. I don't know what that committee is going to recommend, but that recommendation will probably occur sometime after the session, the legislature session. Anything more on the budget?
Nothing looking forward over at a comprehensive level, but we just to kind of give you it's kind of a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the things that we think about in the office as to how to manage costs and to keep our costs reasonable. Tricia has done a little exercise to talk about how we handle some of our paperwork for elections. You want to share something about that, Trish?
Sure. Currently, we spend a whole lot of time doing, as I say, arts and crafts in the office, taping artwork to the fronts and backs of envelopes preparing for an election. So we've looked at the cost of what it takes to do that versus what it would cost to use a reusable and printed envelope. And over the bottom line is for one election, it's $338.44 with labor, the envelopes, the tape, to do the envelopes as we do them now. Per election, having everything printed, we would have a cost of $75.09. So over the course of 11 elections, and 11 elections is because when we order the envelopes pre-printed, they come in boxes of 250. So we spread that out per precinct, and it comes out to 11 elections. We're going to save roughly $2,900 over the course of 11 elections by doing reusable and pre-printed envelopes.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Moving on.
All right, ongoing projects. Just to run down the list here, the segregation of duties document for electoral board registrar is something we closed out last session. And the electoral board may revisit that at whatever time seems appropriate for them and the new registrar. The registrar page program, that's ongoing. We continue to recruit people. Of course, we don't know exactly what the next elections for this year are going to be, so that will also factor into some of the communication we have about that. But that's an ongoing improvement effort. We still have a couple of paperwork items out from precincts that we've proposed to serve as backup precincts. I've gotten back 3 fully executed, and there's still a couple more that we still have to get. That's kind of gone a little bit dormant, but we will reinvigorate that as we get clarity on when the next election might be. We have a request from the state to designate one of our deputy registrars as the chief deputy registrar. And I worked with HR to determine what job specification that might entail, as well as what salary that might entail. And so we've kind of worked our way through that. I've incorporated that number into the fiscal 2027 budget. So when we get down into a little further in the year, that's something that we can look at again in terms of how we actually execute on that request in the Department of Elections.
Yes, as I understand, as far as decisions there, we'll wait until a new registrar is in
Correct.
place.
Yeah.
Before we go further with that
Yep.
situation.
There's a new polling place for precinct 401. St. Thomas More has stepped out. Their facility is not available because of their scheduling. And so we've been looking for it. I think we've made some significant progress and closed that gap as of this meeting. But I'll let the electoral board tackle that in their agenda item. There is a need to have a revisit of the annual policy on remote meetings. So that's something else you also have on your agenda. Also on the list, obviously, is recruitment of a new registrar. And that position is now listed in the city website and whatever other venues the electoral board has chosen to put that on.
Dan, let me speak to that briefly too. I set a deadline of January 16th for applications for the position. And to date, we've had at least 18 applications. What will happen after January 16th is that I will confer with the board to set up a system of review of the applications by individual board members. And then we will set up a special meeting to decide which ones to interview and set up interviews. We hope that we will move along in that process maybe by the second Thursday in February. But that's the situation right now on the selection of a new registrar. Dan and I have discussed that if necessary, he could extend his resignation to the end of April. And so we have a little bit less pressure. But that is the situation we're in right now. Okay.
The last item on our list here is the election worker management software. The board is continuing to review some options, and we will actually have a demo of one of those options later on this meeting. Announcements. So I've submitted a budget to the finance department, includes only one general election, like I mentioned before, and we will need to go back to the city finance committee in order to get funding for any additional elections, which we do expect there will almost certainly be in fiscal 26, the rest of this fiscal year, and also in fiscal 2027, most likely. Next election may be as soon as April 14th, as the assembly votes to put the constitutional amendment before for redistricting before the voters. If there's an April election, early voting could begin as soon as February 27th, so it's coming up very quickly. I say that just to encourage those who are election officers to continue to get their names into Betty here and to find friends to help or whatever Betty would like you to do in order to continue recruiting. Help recruiting. The electoral board is seeking candidates for position of registrar, as we just discussed. The electoral board is seeking applicants for officer of election for 2026 elections. And we actually now, I think, are at a position to select a polling place for precinct 401. If we do have an early election in April, we will probably be doing LNA testing week before week in the 16th. Okay, thank you, Trish.
As Delegate Walker probably knows better than we do, that the end of next week is going to be significant in terms of what we know about elections. We just don't know.
Surprise is on the way.
Nice.
Okay, this is a list of kind of expected things that could happen coming up this year. All of it is tentative, so we won't go into a lot of detail here, but just be aware that we have a very busy schedule potentially coming up for this coming year. Important calendar dates. You can see what's on the calendar here. We already have people in our office with questions about petition signature collection. They have had the start of their ability to file documents for getting on the ballot as of the 2nd. The General Assembly starts on the 14th. Will be closed for Martin Luther King Day. And the nominations for election officers are due to the secretary on January 22nd. We want to encourage our party chairs to do what they can on that. There's a VIVA boot camp coming up on February 7th for whatever the board can attend that. Will be closed on President's Day, February 16th. And we are looking at LNA testing. Should we be having an April election, potentially even on February 17th. March 1st, our initial posture to the Department of Elections will be due for our LSS. That's just a heads up to the board. That's pretty much everything I have. Any questions?
Let's move on to the next agenda item, which is unfinished business, the relocation of precinct 401. No report on that. Steve Troxel was a board member who had primary responsibility for 401. And with his leaving, I took up much of that responsibility along with Mr. Pence and everyone else involved in the registrar's office. We did a really exhaustive search of potential facilities and contacted churches, and schools, looked at other facilities such as the fire station. And fortunately, we've been able to reach out to and agree with All People's Church at 727 Old Graysfield Road. It's actually very well situated for the precinct. It's right in the heart of the precinct road. It's on Graysfield Road, non-commercial area. It has good parking, it has good access, it has a very large all-purpose room that we can use for voting. And it seems to meet all of our needs better than almost any other option we had. So we had, Dan and I met with the pastor there, Pastor Crawford, yesterday. He took it to his board last night, and the board approved the use of the facility as a polling place. I'd like to make a motion to propose All People's Church as a polling place for precinct 401 to City Council. Those of you in attendance may not realize we have a contract with City Council. We have a memorandum of agreement in which they have delegated to us the function of finding polling places and recommending to them what polling places should be used for the city. And therefore, we would recommend this polling place. Their next meeting at which they can consider this is January 27th, which if there's an election, and if there's a vote in April, will require emergency submission to the state and to the federal government for compliance. But we see no real problems with that. So therefore, in the materials is a GIS map that shows the location of the precinct and a short description of what has to happen, which would be an ordinance passed by City Council. But I therefore request that the board approve our submission of All People's Church to City Council to become the polling place for precinct 401. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any readiness, any questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Therefore, passed. Okay.
I say one thing about this. For the places that are polling places, if you're connected to, let's say, any of those churches or any of those places, and you start hearing people saying, I'm not sure if we want to keep doing this. This is part of the civic duty of all people, is to provide places where people can vote. If they have issues, certainly talk to the registrar and so forth. But it's very difficult to keep finding new places. And some of the churches have been on the list, then off the list, then on the list, and off the list. It really would be helpful for that not to happen very often. I'm so glad we found another place. But I'm not sure if it was necessary that we had to do that. And I wish some people had talked to people at Thomas More a little more thoroughly, not us, but others who are affiliated with that church, to say, are you sure you want to make that decision? So if you have those connections to places, please encourage them to say, whatever issues you have, talk to people, you can resolve them so we won't have to do this search again. So
It's a real pleasure to work with the liaisons at these polling places. And it's a real community asset, these facilities presented to us. So we're highly appreciative. We have mostly churches, some community centers, some schools, about 6 schools that we use as polling places. But we really depend on these because they are free to us. We don't need them. And they provide us that access several times a week. Moving on to new business, I'm going to move the presentation of the software to third item. Let's first turn to the review of policy for electronic participation in meetings. By law, recently amended year before last, we are allowed to have electronic meetings on occasion. We have to meet certain conditions. And one of those is that we adopt a policy about electronic meetings. We passed such a policy a little over a year ago. We have re-adopted it last year. And we have to review and adopt it every year. We actually, in the last year, since the implementation of this policy, never used it. We've never conducted meetings either electronically or had electronic participation by anyone. But we have to have this policy in place in order to facilitate that ability to have electronic participation. We have the policy available in the materials. Is there any discussion of it, or do I hear a motion to for us to adopt this policy for 2026?
You just adopted it or you?
Adopted.
Okay. I would move that we adopt the policy that we have had for the last year.
Second. Any unreadiness, any discussion? All in favor of adopting the policy again?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? The policy is adopted. Ms. Gibbs, would you report on the status of our election officers and where we stand as far as election officers?
So currently we have 81 applications for election officers. 27 of them are brand new people to the process, and 17 of them were actually filled out on election. So like the people in the precincts on election day recruiting for help. And also I have mailed out 60 applications to people who have expressed an interest in becoming election officers. And in the process of doing this, my printer has died.
Okay.
So all, anything we get in this next month, then I will bring next month added to this list.
We need at least 120 election officers. 50 are even upwards of 200 if we have multiple elections. And we urge everyone who's been in election office to come back and help us. And we urge everyone who knows people who would see that as a civic duty. There isn't small stipend involved. There's a training session or a set of training sessions involved. But we very much urge people to do that. In the materials, there is a letter required, request required to the local party chair that each party chair that I've done today, requesting that they nominate party members as election officers. That enables us to try to have parity in all of our precincts between Democrats and Republicans. We as a board can also recruit and select nonpartisan election officers or other election officers that we have will in the past and future. But if anyone here knows of anyone who can be an election officer, please encourage them to do that. What's our schedule? Is ready for what we are to do with our election officers. We have to have the next meeting actually select them.
Right, we'll appoint them at the next meeting, and then I'll notify them that they're appointed and tell them that it's required that they come to training. And maybe by then I can also, it'll be tomorrow that, no, it'll be next month. By then maybe we'll be able to tell them tentative elections.
We should have. We also will decide whether to appoint them to 1 or 2 or 3 year terms. We've got a policy in place. Okay. Shall we, any action needed to be taken today on election officers? Shall we turn to the poll worker software? At a previous meeting, we had looked at another company's software. What has happened is that in managing our election officers, election day assignments, our communications with them, our ability to make sure who is an election officer, and a lot of logistical requirements. The ability to keep track of this is massive. Right now, the duty, mostly by law, falls on the secretary of the board. And we have discussed in the past use of a more electronic means that is better accessible to all board members and the registrar's office to be able to manage the election office process. This company that is today is a company that provides such software. Once we receive this report, we will be discussing at a future meeting whether this package or a prior package or some other package is a package we would present to council. There's a significant cost involved in these packages. So we need to keep that in mind. We're not going to discuss the cost today because that's more an issue for the closed board meeting. But we are going to go into the details.
Yeah, you want to try it? Just wait a second screen.
We're trying to get this on the screen here. There.
There is a remote, but it's.
Well, while we're trying to figure that out, thank you all for having me. My name is Max Wolterstorff, and I'm the CEO of Electask, the company I run. The product that we're going to be talking about today is called Poll Worker Hub. And we, late last year, talked to some of our clients and realized there was a gap in the market for a product that was modern in terms of election worker management that didn't cost an arm and a leg. So I appreciate the comments on budget earlier. I used to work for the state of California. I'm very mindful of what it means to have a budget and how impactful that is. And so we built, within the last year, a brand new piece of poll worker management software that we think is, we think it's the best. Since we launched it earlier this spring, we've had 15 jurisdictions across the United States sign on to use it, including some you may have heard of, like City County of Denver. In terms of municipalities about your size, City of Janesville, Wisconsin is one, and Warren County, just a few miles north of here, is a customer of ours as well. In the presentation today, once we get it up, I'm going to kind of outline how our product will be able to benefit both the registrar's office and also election workers in Lynchburg. And we really tried to build this with election workers in mind so that it's easy for them to interact with and really adds to their experience rather than having something that they have to know. I can
Try that. And then what I'll do is I'll just drag this over onto the other side.
Yeah, is there a link to that?
Yes, so we'll get you that information. Hang on a second.
Let's all not stare at them as they're trying to pull this out. It's nerve-wracking for anyone who's trying to do that.
Yeah, so let me give you back that.
Yes.
If it's not working.
Sure.
Just strange, isn't it?
Try.
Well, this is why doing things live is always a bit of a risk.
Now, while they're doing this, I do want to acknowledge and thank the presence of previous registrars at this meeting. Ms. Arnold, Mr. Rick, Ms. Gibbon, here. It's really nice seeing you all. I was not on the board at the time. It's nice actually meeting you.
That's right. So part of the drill here.
Challenging. The registrar makes it so much better.
A little bit more information about our company while we're trying to do this. We've been around since 2017. We were originally started out of California as a piece of custom software for Sacramento County out there. Since then, we've grown to, across both of our products, be used by about 50 jurisdictions across the United States. And then, on Poll Worker, Warren County uses us, and then Prince William County uses us on another product.
What does Prince William County do with you?
So our other product is a task management piece of software, so helping larger offices understand who's working on what election deadlines are coming up, and helping the registrar and the board understand just the important things that are going on in the office, and that's what they use it for.
This is you, right?
That's me, yes, sir.
Okay. You'll see it momentarily.
That's
Okay, so once you join this meeting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this and try and get this off the screen.
okay.
Let's see if I can put it on.
Okay, I'm in the meeting.
Maybe a step forward.
Share. And then I request to share, if you allow me to share.
Yeah, let me Just find that here, right here, this one. Where's my pointer? Where am I pointing go? There it is. Right?
Yep, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. I'm gonna go ahead and perfect. Good. There we go. All right. So again, I'm Max, and as I'm gonna kind of try to keep this relatively short and give you a lot of opportunity to ask any questions. But the goal of our software is, again, to help the registrar kind of streamline their operations when it comes to election worker management, and then also to give the public and those who want to be election workers and are signed up to be election workers a way to interact with the office and just streamline the entire piece. I'll go ahead and sign in here. First, we're going to kind of look at what the registrar sees and some of the tools that are included in this that are going to help them with their job. And then we're going to look at the poll worker side and kind of show how it works from there. So from the registrar side, our software makes it really easy for the registrar to understand exactly where the staffing levels are for each election, understand party distribution for the overall election, and understand where the gaps are. It also allows them to communicate with election workers via both email and text, and that's two-way. So they can send out emails and text to election workers, and they can also receive emails and text back from election workers, and that's all included in the system. It will also highlight shifts that have been declined by election workers where they know they have a gap and now need to fill it. In terms of this election, as you can see, we've done a pretty good job staffing this demo election, but we do have that decline shift that needs to be addressed. I'll just briefly show how the registrar would do that. So they can see now by venue the staffing levels. We're mostly green except for this red here. And so they can click into that and then see the entire shift schedule for that venue. They can see party distribution. And this is also on the day of where a election worker would be checked in or checked out by the leader of the precinct. We have that person who needs to be reassigned here, so I'll go ahead and delete them and hit assign worker. And this is also a place where we really help the registrar surface who would be the best candidates for that role. Sometimes you may have someone drop out, the day before, 2 days before, and so the registrar needs to quickly understand, okay, who is coming in to backfill that. Our system helps by allowing them to understand who's available at that venue on that day for that specific role. It'll highlight exactly how far away that person is. It'll highlight whether they've done training or not, as well as their party distribution, or excuse me, their party affiliation. And then it also allows the registrar to set defaults for a specific role. So if there's a role that, for example, requires someone to lift 30 pounds, the registrar can say, okay, I'm only going to service people who have those qualifications. They can also sort and filter by distance. So for example, let's say we want someone within 10 miles, and then that allows them to make their choice.
Now,
So,
when
yes, sir.
you say party workers check in or check out, how is that information communicated to the software?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple different ways to do that. Within each venue, we call them venues in our system. This would be a precinct for you. Within each venue, someone can be designated a supervisor, and they get the ability through their work portal to check in and or just in their precinct. And so they would go through this and hit check in and check out. However, if you did have people, maybe a supervisor isn't the most technologically literate person, you can print out a physical copy of the sign-in sheet for people to sign in and then, backfill that information.
What medium does the worker portal reside on? Cell phone?
Yeah, so it's it basically resides in a web browser and it's adaptable for cell phones, tablets, computers, etc. I just wanted to kind of show you from the worker side. So we've had this worker assigned, and then sorry, I just need to pull this down a little bit. If I go, hang on, sorry, 1 sec. I just realized I'm showing my entire inbox there. 1 sec. I apologize. There we go. So this is now from the worker side. Because they have been assigned to this role, they automatically get a branded email saying that they have a new assignment. They can see all the details, including who they need to contact if they have any questions, and they can actually accept or decline that shift directly from the email. So these are big, bright buttons. This is mobile optimized. Someone can access this on their phone. Just click that button, and now their shift has been accepted, and they can go ahead and add it to their calendar. So just a really easy way for an election worker to, well, first of all, for the registrar to not have to, manually follow up with every single person, and then an easy way for the election worker to engage with the system. In terms of other features from the registrar perspective, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here trying to find the right window. I mentioned that communication piece. Our system does allow a registrar, again, to see the full communication history with each worker. They can see all the emails and texts that have been sent out to the system, both the automated ones like those notifications, as well as any manual ones that they've done. And this also allows, in a state like Virginia where you do need party parity, this allows a registrar to easily find people who might be of a particular party. So if a registrar was looking, for people who are available at ballot processing HQ and they need a Democrat, they can just filter, a Democrat at ballot processing HQ. And then there's the list of folks who may be a good fit for a role they're trying to fill. They can just simply hit contact applicants and send out an email that can then be replied to directly from there. So, large efficiencies in managing a large workforce for a registrar. Other things that registrars really like is we actually have training, the ability to do training included in the system. So for in-person trainings, there's the ability for a registrar to define when those training sessions are, how many spots are available. And then from the worker perspective, there's the ability to sign up for those through the worker portal. Or there's the ability for the registrar, if they're on the phone with someone, to say, hey, there's a training on January 10th, and to sign up that person and have them automatically receive that confirmation of training. So that's another feature folks really like. And then one that I'm not sure, I actually don't know if this is something you all would use, but we do have full e-sign capabilities. So for things like oaths, you can present those to an election worker virtually and have them legally sign those documents virtually, and then those get attached to their application and their applicant profile. Those are, I could go a lot longer on the registrar side, but I just wanted to see if anyone had any questions on how this can help registrars before I show a couple of the things on how poll workers.
What do you use to do the e-sign? Tell me a little bit more about the e-sign.
Yeah, so the e-sign is it's home built. So basically the way that it works is, and I can show you in a live version from the poll worker side. A poll worker, they access the worker portal through a secure link in their email, so we know that it's them that's in the worker portal. And then we present basically an e-sign flow to them, which then does a timestamp and has them attest to the legally binding nature of their signature. And those are the the key things that you need for that to be legally binding. To be able to prove that it's the person who did it, who signed it, and then you need that person to attest.
Is there a way to track that people are being paid for their stints as poll workers?
Yes, sir. And the way that it works is under each role, you can define rates of pay. Those rates of pay can be hourly rates of pay, flat rates of pay, or daily rates of pay. And then our system, based on who's checked in and who's checked out on the day of, will actually automatically calculate the table needed for each person. You can do things like additional stipends for training. So if someone's completed a series of trainings, they get additional stipends. And they can also, it can also do overtime calculations. So if someone works a certain amount of hours in a shift, you can define what that cutoff is and then what the rate is for additional hours. From the poll worker side, I just want to briefly talk about how a poll worker might interact with this. So, and again, I apologize for jumping around here. So every one of our clients has a branded application that they can put on their website. This is created by the registrar. It has the questions that the registrar wants, which may be in addition to availability and things like that. Certain qualifications for various jobs. So this could be, can you lift 35 pounds? Are you capable of driving at night? You know, these questions that really allow a registrar to establish whether someone's qualified for a job. A couple things that we added in here that also help a registrar is if someone has already applied, it's not going to allow them to submit a duplicate application. So that way the data that a registrar has is kept clean. The other thing is this is connected with Google Maps. And so when I type my address in here, and again, this is from the poll worker side, it's going to show me all of the locations within a certain distance that I'm willing to go. So someone can say, I'm willing to drive 10 miles, and then it's going to show the venues that are available for them to go to, and they can indicate, this isn't a set in stone thing, but they can indicate, hey, these are my preferences. I would be okay with going to any of these venues.
We have a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, with the application, with the poll worker that's applying, if they've already applied, it keeps them from doing a duplicate, but does it allow them to update their information?
Yes, it sure does. And through the worker portal, which I can show you now, through the worker portal, the first thing they see is a worker readiness checklist. And the first item on that worker readiness checklist is to update their availability and their preferred venues for the upcoming election cycle.
Is there a verification system for ID of a person, such as they call it two-factor?
You're saying when someone logs into the worker portal?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that the worker portal works is if you access it directly through an email that comes out of our system that's been verified, you actually don't need authentication. There's an authentication token built directly into that. And so if you are a worker, you don't have to remember a separate login. You can just use the link in the email. If you just go and access the worker portal kind of without going through an email, it's going to ask you for your email address, and then it's going to send an authentication code to the email address. So it's not going to ask you for a separate password. People don't like remembering, one more password, but it is going to authenticate. So while we're on the worker portal piece, again, I apologize for jumping around here. There we go. So this is what the worker portal looks like for a election worker. As you can see, they have the worker readiness checklist where they can see the things that they need to do in order to be fully ready. That could include things like training. And you can see here we have some training classes that are available. That could be things like required documents. And this is an example of the e-sign functionality that I talked about earlier. So someone can fill this out. They can, date it. They can sign. And then that gets added to their profile for the registrar to see. So they can also see their assignments. So this is where they would be able to see when they're working, and they can make changes to that. So if they can no longer do it, they can give a reason for that. And then the registrar will be able to see that reason. The registrar will also get notified that that person has declined that role. Finally, this is also where they can update their information. So, if any of their information that is being collected in the application form changes, they can go ahead and update that as well. Let's see. So that's basically, I'm going to end it there because I want to give people the opportunity to ask questions. But as you can see from the registrar side, it really helps just understanding the list of hundreds and hundreds of potential poll workers and breaking them down into people who can actually, work and are qualified. And then from the worker side, it gives them an easy way to see, what are the shifts coming up. It'll send them out those automatic reminders before a shift. It'll make very clear what training they have to do, what documents they have to sign, and just give them a really easy way to interact with the office. So again, thank you for your time, and I'll.
So in terms of messaging, you do email, obviously. Do you also do text messages?
Yes, sir. So within Poll Worker Hub, and again, I apologize for jumping around. If I go to the communication center as the registrar, I can, on a one-off basis, just type out an email or text to someone and hit send, that's going to then be added to their communication history, and the registrar will be able to see that full communication history. I can also do a mass communication. So if an election was coming up and I wanted to send an email out or a text out to everyone who in this example is a precinct captain, which would be the equivalent of your chiefs, I could just select that. The system's automatically going to pull those people up, and then you can compose an email or text either from a template or something that you just do.
Is there any messaging cost?
We include the cost of messaging in our overall price, so we don't charge extra for messaging.
Can you attach a picture in there, like if I have my printout of my votes that we need to send into the registrar's office, can you attach a?
You're saying from the worker side?
From the worker side?
Yeah, absolutely. So your response, whatever it is, will be logged in the system. And actually, if I click on, I think this one, like here's an example of like a more rich text email that's come back in with some images in it and stuff like that.
Okay, my question is riding on Mr. Levy's question about the security of it, about the two-part authentication.
Yes, ma'am.
You say it's secure with the email that you send. You have a secure link, so you don't require that. But if somebody hacks your email, they still got access.
Yes, if
if somebody wants to get into it bad enough, they hack your email. They know you're a worker, and they hack your email, and they have the access because you don't have that two-party authentication.
Yes, ma'am. And the information that they would be able to see if they hacked your email and found, so actually, first of all, I'll say those links, they expire after 3 days. So if you haven't gotten, if you haven't clicked on it within 3 days, it will no longer work. And you'll have to get a new one. The other thing I'll say is if someone hacked your email, the information that they would see is basically just the personal information of that worker. So, we would certainly not recommend people storing like social security numbers or something like that in a public place on this system. But I think, I guess it stands to reason that if your email got hacked, any system that requires a two-factor authentication to email is then vulnerable. So we try to balance security with also ease of use, and this is kind of where we landed on. Yes, sir.
Are there any safeguards for any nefarious activity between and for the or against the registrar, social registrar, or the poll worker? That is there any security? I mean, when this comes into play, you put this online, who's ultimately in charge of it? Is there any oversight above the registrar?
Could you clarify your statement a little bit more?
People cheat.
Yeah.
And people who are in charge cheat.
Okay.
And obviously, we have a lot of information.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if there is a safeguard to guard against that.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is, the safeguard against that would kind of be our company. We do have, our system does have the ability for a registrar to grant kind of read-only access to someone like a board member who would be able to oversee that. So that's certainly an option. We have the ability to, delete, the information. If requested by a customer, we would delete information from our databases. If there's a specific kind of vulnerability that you're worried about, I'd be happy to address that further. But I guess what I would say is there is the ability for a board member to get read-only access or full access, and we take security safeguards very seriously. And if there was something that happened, we have all sorts of policies and procedures in place to address that. And luckily, in our 8-year history, we've never had any sort of intrusion into our systems.
I think that's a good set of questions.
I think they're important, yeah.
I think that's a good set of questions.
Yeah, what kind of vetting do you do for your employees? And I ask that because, personally, Christmas Eve, my checking account got hacked. And the only thing I pay directly out of my checking account are my utility bills.
Yeah.
So, somebody made their loan payment out of my checking account. So I mean, so I know it had to be somebody in one of these utility companies. So,
Yeah.
you know, what kind of safeguards do you have with your employees?
Yeah, so first of all, what I'll say is we're a small company, and there's two of us, so it's not like we're some, expansive operation where we have, stuff all over the place.
So basically, the buck stops with you.
Right.
I will give anyone here my direct line, and if they have any problems, they can give me a call. But no, but seriously, and we try to make ourselves incredibly available to our customers. As you know, the election space is an extremely small space. If we were not doing a good job, we would not have been in business for 7 years. We wouldn't have 50 customers across the United States. I mean, I'm very proud of what we built, and we really try to treat our customers really well. And I would definitely invite you to, I know you've probably talked to Warren County, definitely invite you all to talk to Prince William County or, any of the other dozens of counties who use us, and they can attest to kind of the quality of service.
It's a good product.
Thank you.
I am wondering, and I can appreciate improving processes, and I understand the importance of managing data and large amounts of data. But I'm wondering, my question is to the electoral board, what prompted the desire? How much data, or what was the problem with managing the data that you're managing that made you consider something like this? And what was the process before? I mean, the electoral board, this process has been established for a long time. How was it working before, and what have you discovered that made it stop working?
Well, it hasn't stopped working. There is, what is in place now is a series of spreadsheets and individual mail programs that primarily Betty Gibbs has. We do not have integration with texting and email between these. We don't have all the capabilities of communicating with people, the best way to communicate with them. We have somewhat of a lack of transparency of what we really have. I can't see what's on Betty's computer. And we don't keep it in the public space or the city's computer. So we're not sure what we have to begin with. We are also in a time when we are really needing to up our election worker effort and management and really make it easier to communicate with election workers and have them communicate with us. And this set of software tools is something that's happening across the country with various different companies doing it that seem to offer the ability to manage our election worker officers better.
I have one more question. The election workers, poll workers. In your experience now, I don't know what your error rate is in the precinct on election day. I don't know what your training experiences are, but my question is, are they as eager for a process like this as you are, and can they handle it?
Well, to an extent, they're not going to have as much of a challenge with it. We have not told them about it. We are still exploring what this can do for us. We are not planning to adopt this next week immediately. But your point about checking with them is well taken. And what is the burden on them as well as on us? It's not a tool that I expect to lose on.
Final thought. I am just wondering, is the risk for data being compromised worth the convenience of having to take possibly some tasks off of said official?
This is a classic dilemma we all have. Keeping the data on our own computers is at risk. Is data in the cloud that may be more secure than our own computer? Or is it more at risk? It's a calculated set of decisions. I have a law firm that very difficult decision.
Chair, maybe, do you mind if I say another word in response to your question? I do want to just address kind of the cloud aspect of it. We use Amazon Web Services, servers in Northern Virginia as our backend to this program. So all your data is going to be, I think, up in Loudoun County. And we also encrypt data end to end. So we use a company called Cloudflare to provide encryption for all data that is in transit. We never have ownership over that data. Our customers have ownership over that data, and we do what they say with that data. And we also don't use that data for anything except providing this service. So we don't even run analytics on it. I mean, the only thing we use with that data is to provide this.
Have you explored whether the city is also looking at similar kinds of basically personnel management software, and could this be duplicative of their efforts?
No, we haven't explored that.
I think that could be worked out.
We doubt this tool would be something the city would use. I don't think there's such a level of specificity to this tool that is in the election space. We've seen this in the other vendors as well. Very much tuned to the election space. And it's not something I would see that a more generalized tool would use for us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I just had a quick question, but it wasn't relating to the software, which it's a question for Mr. Prince's presentation, and it's just for clarification. On one of the slides, on the first bullet, it said, and it was in regard to getting funding for the elections, and they only allocate enough for one election. But it said, go to the finance committee and they will allocate the money. But you technically have to go to city council meeting, don't you?
So the finance committee is precursor to the city council. So the city council has to approve budget
Okay,
amendments.
that's all I just.
But it doesn't even get to that stage until you go through.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jeff.
Yeah, one thing that you mentioned was an optional use of the hub software for election officers to virtually sign documents.
Yes, sir.
And my question is, would this possibly include signing a statement of results virtually on election night?
I would say probably not. The object of that signing is really during the onboarding process to have a centralized place for the paperwork for election officials, rather than anything that touches results or counting or anything of that.
Okay, I've left this open up as a way of merging into the public comment period. Normally, we don't take questions during the public comment period, but we just accept people's questions or statements and we choose whether or not to respond to them. But at this point, the next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Are there any comments from the public? Mr. Rosner.
Hey, I'm Jeff Rosner, representative of the Lynchburg Democratic Committee. I wanted to just report on two recent developments. And they are related but distinct from developments earlier on the, or one of them is distinct and but related to the effort by the U.S. Department of Justice to obtain voter data from the states. Just last month, the U.S. Department of Justice proposed that it review state voter rolls, identify ineligible voters, and have the states remove those voters within 45 days. In Virginia, of course, this would violate state law. So far, This is voluntary, but for how long? Especially since the Department of Justice is suing 23 states to obtain their voter rolls. And another example where national actions impact local elections, the U.S. Postal Service is now postmarking mail when processed instead of when received. So an absentee ballot mailed by election day might be postmarked several days later and therefore would not be counted.
Any other comments at this stage? That being said, any other comments from the board? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? I second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Oh.